welcome to the FarmBits podcast.
FarmBits is proudly produced by the Nebraska Digital Agriculture team and hosted by the students at the University of Nebraska.
The FarmBits podcast comes to you each week to discuss trends, the realities, and the value of digital agriculture.
Through interviews with experts, producers, and innovators from across the agriculture industry, we hope that you step away from each episode with new practical knowledge of digital agriculture technology.
Hello, FarmBits followers, and welcome to another episode of the FarmBits podcast. I'm Emily Hanson.
And I'm Deepak Ghimire, and we are glad to have you with us as we begin diving into the topic of irrigation management.
Today, we have Reece Andrews, a product manager for FieldNET and Zimmatic controls at Lindsay Corporation.
Associated with Lindsay for many years, Reece has been supporting growers around the world through his work with the team at Lindsay.
My name is Reece Andrews. My background, I grew up in a small town called Newman Grove, Nebraska back in the mid-'80s, and I've been raised around farming and ranching really all my life, and helping friends and family on their farms. I got to see, I basically got to see firsthand how hard farmers worked and the type of time they put in, and that really, from what I'm doing now, that really shaped my perspective on on the farmers, kind of work-life balance. Created a huge amount of respect, for those great people, and it's a industry that's just fun to be in. And how I got into the industry in the first place when I was young is, Newman Grove was only 7 miles away from Lindsay, and so Lindsay's, the home of Lindsay Manufacturer, the biggest employer in that real rural area that's out there, and they built the Zimmatic irrigation system. So shortly out of high school, I started my career at Lindsay. That was in 1988. So it was a while ago. Working first, I started working first in the shop, and about a year later, I became an industrial engineer and worked on the factory with automation and things that industrial engineers do, try to do continuous improvement within the factory itself. And during that same time, I went to college, very non-traditional student, exclusively went to classes at night, and eventually, earned my degree at Wayne State College with an emphasis in marketing, and working full time, and going to school at night. That was a good drive. I always say I crammed my 4-year degree into 15 years. But in 97, I jumped at a chance to take a brand new role that was created at Lindsay called the New Technology Product Manager. And my responsibility in that role was to lead and create technology products, because at that point, we really, the Zimmatic was the only brand, and real basic, control systems, and the growers, the voice of the customer was they wanted more. So, in my role today is the senior product manager for Zimmatic and FieldNET controls.
It sounds interesting. Like you have a long background working with Lindsay.
Same company, all this time.
That's awesome. So with that note, could you give us an overview of what Lindsay, Zimmatic, FieldNET are, and what's kind of relation between them?
Sure. So now it's called Lindsay Corporation, and we're a leading manufacturer and distributor of irrigation systems, infrastructure, equipment, and technology. And Lindsay Manufacturing was established back in 1995 as initially a gas station that did a little bit of work in welding for supporting farmers. And about 10 years later, the founders, 2 sons, Art and Bernie Ghimire, where the name kind of eventually came out of for the brand, expanded that business into irrigation. Today we deliver, through innovation and manufacturing excellence into the brands that we call Zimmatic and FieldNET. So Zimmatic is our mechanized solution, center pivots, corner machines, laterals, and FieldNET is our integrated remote control, irrigation management and scheduling technology. So you could say on one hand, Zimmatic is the structure and controller, and then on the other hand, FieldNET is the cloud-based irrigation management solution.
So, with that, other than irrigation, what other industries is Lindsay involved in?
Yeah, ultimately, we expanded into some different areas. And what's interesting is, when you look at kind of the macroeconomic drivers of irrigation, it's the global population, and it's where farmers need to feed the world, right? And Lindsay has another industry that we call infrastructure that is based on those same types of drivers, population growth. And in this industry, we have innovative solutions that mobilize population safety and sustainability, so that the main families of products are road safety products and management brands that help protect the population on highways and bridges. As an example, barrier systems, and you guys have probably seen them, and you got construction going on down, let's say down the interstate or whatever. It's that barrier that keeps your car from getting over and getting into the construction site where people could get hurt. And we also make crash cushions, where you see guardrails, and they've got these either these big barrels, or they got these specialized metal rails that they kind of crush, and they absorb the force of a colliding vehicle to help save lives, again, back into the safety products. And one of the most interesting products we have is called the Road Zipper. It is a big vehicle used to move this barrier system to open up lanes. And so an example is like at the Golden Gate Bridge, I don't know how many lanes there are. Let's just say 10, so they can actually, based on the traffic flow and demand of the traffic flow. So in the morning when everybody's going into work, they can open up the bridge on the incoming, and maybe have 6 or 7 lanes, and then flip that around when everybody's going home in the afternoon. So it's kind of an interesting, really interesting and high tech product that they have. And then the final industry we're in is it's called IoT, which is industrial Internet of Things. And we have a company called Alexis near Kansas City that builds and has powerful end-to-end products and services that basically it's kind of like FieldNET in a way, but different industry that connects remote assets to equipment, in oil and gas and municipalities and railroad solutions.
Such an interesting and diverse range of products you have.
Yeah. And,
So-
and they all kind of complement each other, because like with Alexis, the hardware, the remote control monitoring hardware, the wireless products, they build them for us, and so we're able to leverage that wireless technology and kind of pool our resources together.
Yeah, that's great. So we are focused today on irrigation management. So let us dive more into the FieldNET product that we have. So how compatible is the FieldNET with other older pivots, and if there is like certain kind of panel model required for it to work with?
And it's actually pretty simple, because FieldNET, we have some different products around FieldNET, but probably our kind of our main, what's the word I'm looking for, the kind of the champion product is called FieldNET Pivot Control. And we released that in early, I think it was 2015, and it was an aftermarket solution. And our FieldNET Pivot Control is essentially, it's an affordable remote control solution that has a little bit of a user interface, so that you can use it when you're in the field, but it attaches to any electric control panel that's on a pivot, and then that control panel just remains there, and this pivot control system just gets installed on the side of it. So it doesn't matter if that grower had a 30-year-old standard or basic panel, or they have a 2-year-old modern computer panel. We're able to standardize their entire operation using the FieldNET Pivot Control, and it just simply takes that panel over, and they don't even use that panel then after it. The pivot control just uses that panel for the electrical. And then it includes GPS, so that you can have your your in-gun controls and your application speeds and changes, and so you end up with full control of that system.
In your opinion, how has FieldNET changed the general irrigation management procedures for producers?
It's kind of interesting. In the beginning of it, back in '97, one of my first projects was kind of a base station type of a telemetry system, and it using that type of a system like FieldNET and anything that's remote control has clearly gone from a nice to have to a must have. And today producers, they value their time and labor so much, whereas maybe a couple decades ago they really didn't, but they really do now. And saving time and increasing peace of mind is kind of a key benefit to producers, and they immediately see an ROI on it. And and then kind of the bonus behind it is that gives them more time to spend with family or activities or other key farming actions that they have to spend their attention on versus driving around checking pivots all the time. And and what's interesting though is as they've expanded their use, their use and understanding of FieldNET, they see so many opportunities where they can improve their their irrigation management. The old saying, and if you don't measure something, it's hard to improve it. And I always remember this quote from an old dealer back when we released FieldNET back in 2007, and he really jumped in with both feet and selling FieldNET to his customers. And I wrote his quote down. He says, FieldNET makes them, the producers, more aware of the conditions that their pivots are in, and they want them in tip-top operating condition. And it's true. You add FieldNET to an older system, and all of a sudden the grower's getting pressure alerts, and they can be kind of annoying, and they're calling their dealer saying, what's wrong with my system? And then they check it out and they find out it's either, the pump isn't operating, it's sucking air, or its pressure regulator's not working properly. But that may seem small, but if you think about it, over the years, they probably weren't applying the correct, or what they thought was the amount of water that they were putting down, and that probably or possibly resulted in lost yield, and they just didn't even recognize that. And now they can fix those little things, and it's money back into their pocket.
Great. Yeah, great to know that these products are actually helping farmers better manage the irrigation. On that note, among producers who are currently using the Lindsay products, how has the precision irrigation changed over time?
I think you can definitely say that there's a couple different ways to scale and define precision irrigation. For example, FieldNET today, just kind of right out of the box, for no extra hardware cost or subscription cost, you can create what we call a sectional variable rate irrigation plan. So it's pie slices, and those pie slices means that you can apply water more or less just by speeding up, slowing down, etc. And it's a very common method, to save water, save energy. Good fit would be like a 2-crop field. Maybe you're half corn, half soybean. You put irrigation down on the corn, and then you get into the soybean, and you can speed up because it's not, demanding as much water. And so you make your circle faster, meaning you use less water. And if you make the circle faster, you've also then used less energy as well. And also it's a great fit for, maybe little to moderate variations in the field, such as terrain or soil type. But then that has evolved into, what we call full precision variable rate irrigation control, where you can control it all the way down to the sprinkler level. And it adds more cost to the system, but in the right conditions, you can provide significant increases in in yield and savings in water and energy.
Yeah, so kind of on the same track of some irrigation scheduling, when I was looking on the Zimmatic and Lindsay website, I found that there was water trend. So what is water trend? What information information does it use to determine how crops are using water, and how does it help with some irrigation scheduling?
Yeah, great. I'm impressed. You know the names of a lot of our products. Yeah, FieldNET with Water Trend. It's kind of the software side, right? So so the base FieldNET is a device in the field, monitoring and controlling. It's on the cloud then with FieldNET, and then FieldNET with Water Trend then is a software piece that has advanced a data science modeling technology that provides a 7-day forecast or outlook of your crop water usage and precip amounts. And so it's based on field specific forecasted rainfall amounts, crop growth models. Water Trend is kind of a spin-off of what we call our award-winning FieldNET Advisor, which is the kind of the broader, more featured solution for irrigation scheduling. But what instead of doing a kind of a full season forecast and also providing recommendations, Water Trend provides that 7-day forecast of crop water use and 7-day forecast of expected water amounts. So as an example, if it's forecasting evapotranspiration or the outputs of 1.25 inches, but it's only forecasting 1/4 inch of rain, the grower can then use that delta to determine do I want to irrigate or not irrigate. So it's really simple for the grower. They can get a forecasted growth stage as well, all in one look when they look at their phone, and provide field specific weather for that pivot as well, again on that one look. And what's cool about Water Trend is that it's included with the subscription at no extra cost, and can be upgraded at any time to FieldNET Advisor to gain more features as well as gain imagery. But it's a great starting point, and I think what you were thinking with your question is it gets the grower on the road towards really dialing in. They don't have to worry about all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. It's just really simple, and it gives them that check and balance that they can make some informed decisions on when to irrigate and when not to irrigate. And in a lot of cases where the benefit becomes is they may end up two less irrigation passes a year and not sacrifice any yield loss at all, and they have all that benefit of not running that water and the energy it takes to run that water.
So amazing to see how the use of technologies and the data has been helping farmers to better manage the irrigations and save some cost. So as we are learning more about the FieldNET, so is a FieldNET crop specific, or is it versatile enough to be used for any crops?
So like with FieldNET Advisor, we can, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, there's probably about 20 crops that are supported in FieldNET Advisor. Of course, it's got the most, the popular corn and soybeans, but there's corn for silage, cotton, potatoes, wheat, barley, sorghum, sugar beets, and then it also has, if we haven't captured it, there's also then kind of a custom input, so that kind of the second part of your question, is it universal enough, and then just with a few inputs from the producer, they can put in their own updates, and then they can update the crop growth stages manually throughout the season. But we do have those built in, very specifically supported crops, and it's easy to set up. I mean, a producer just basically selects the the type and the hybrid, the planting date, and they enter a maturity information, and the modeling it just goes from there, and it becomes transparent to the grower from there.
Yeah, that's great. I know that would be really useful for a lot of producers that I know, and even on my own family's farm.
Mm-hmm.
So looking back at the Zimmatic precision, how easy is it for producers to vary the depth of water that they apply?
and you're talking the full precision VRI. It's real easy. Initially when you set it up, kind of depends on what their ultimate, operational objective is, but they can pull in soil maps, and then with those soil maps, they could turn those soil maps into what we call management zones, or they can, trace. It's very map centric, so they could just go in and trace. They could create, crop zones, or what we call avoid areas. And it's like, okay, I absolutely don't want any water here. And they can put a polygon in there and do that. And then as they make edits, as the season goes along and they see they want to put more or less, it is pretty easy for them. You can kind of see where you've got these different zones, and I can just tap on one and it highlights it, and then I can down here, just make a quick adjustment up or down to that zone, put more or less water, more or less fertilizer.
Okay, so kind of with that, are you able to make prescriptions on a computer and then upload it to the panel?
You can do that. You can build a prescription, but then the easier way, and what I actually had in my hand here was FieldNET. You build the subscription, or if you're editing it, and then you just push it wirelessly, and that's the easiest way to do it.
So that means like everything can be done right away from the phone, and you don't need a computer setup or anything.
Correct. Yep, it's all cloud. It's all cloud-based, so you don't need special software.
That seems very, very helpful for a lot of producers. So, despite several advantages of precision VRI, not all farms and farmers benefit from choosing precision VRI compared to regular irrigation systems. From your perspective, what are key considerations that farmers should make as to whether they should invest in a VRI system compared to a regular system?
One quick thought that comes to mind is regulatory. So if there's areas, let's take like dairy farms as an example, or it doesn't have to be dairy. I mean any animal. If they're pumping any effluent, using pivots to apply effluent out on the fields, there might be some regulations that if they had a dry creek bed going through, and they say, okay, you're okay pumping effluent as long as you don't, pump it here or here or here. So that would be one area, where you can precisely control what we call avoid zones because of regulatory, and I guess where the return on investment for them is that if they do put it there, they might get fined, and so they avoid the fine. And then the other area is just, what is the diversity of the terrain, the soil type, the number of crops, just irregularities, right? That they could benefit by having precision irrigation. In some cases, farmers, if they have corner systems, so it's a pivot with a corner system on it that opens up into the corners, they find that as the season progresses, maybe they progressively get a little drier, progressively get a little wetter in corners, and they like to use VRI to actually help control that and keep kind of everything even, or from the surrounding area. And then sometimes you even get into some really strange and irregular things. It might be a pivot that's literally crossing a deep creek, or even a functional creek, and they got bridges over it, or it's a really bad swampy area, but it's only in one area, and if they try to run their pivot through it and irrigate that swampy area, they get stuck the next time. So different reasons for different people on where full precision VRI can help them out.
Yeah, of course, like nothing fits all. So there might be some variations across fields and the requirements of the farmers that might lead to, as you discussed. So on that note, farmers have already been using the precision VRI from Lindsay. So how has been the response of users out in the field? And if you have any particular story that you can highlight today where this technology has really impacted someone's operation.
I recall being up in Canada a few years ago. It was a big sugar beet operation, and they would rotate between a lot of different crops, but they were in an area kind of with that regulatory that I was talking about before, and and they couldn't put, it wasn't a water specific restriction, but it was a fertilizer chemical restriction that they couldn't put in that creek bed. So, they use VRI to to meet the requirements. Um, in North Dakota, a lot of potatoes are actually grown up in North Dakota, but there's also a lot of good, very aggressive sandy terrain, and when you get those hot days, a lot of evaporation going on. They use variable rate irrigation to rob from the low sandy areas, put it in the high sandy areas, because what they want to have a nice consistent potato crop. McDonald's doesn't like a bunch of different sizes, or whatever their market is, and so they use variable rate irrigation to create consistency in yield throughout the field, and a consistency in the crop, kind of size and quality, especially when you get into potatoes and you get into coastal areas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. You run into areas where it can be, again, almost pure sand in the same field to just a really black, heavy bottom type soil. And again, it's a matter of kind of moving the water around. Don't put it all down in the heavy soil, because it's not good. And so they just kind of move it around. And even in Nebraska, I was talking to I was up in the Neely area where I like to camp once in a while, and up there where they've got they got heavier soils, they got the lighter soils, and just switching, moving that water from heavier to lighter. They saw 20 to 30 and corn, 20 to 30 bushel gains in both soil types just by moving the water around. And somebody said up there, and I'd wrote it down. One person had commented to me, and this was about 3 years ago, that my irrigation land is worth about $3,500 an acre, but where and they had a couple of VRI systems, but where I can consistently control the irrigation, it can bring $6,000 an acre. So really increase the value of the land, not only giving them a better yield and consistent crop, but increase the value of that irrigated land.
Yeah, it's really nice to be able to see those yield increases. So I guess back to talking about the pivot panels. I know of some producers who are hesitant to upgrade pivot panels because they are hesitant to trust new technology, and they like their very basic, just having switches in the panel because they can go through and replace things. What are some reasons why producers should think about upgrading to newer panels and panels that would be more compatible with FieldNET?
With the FieldNET pivot control, one nice thing about the FieldNET pivot control is they don't necessarily have to upgrade their panel at all. And with that, we're not seeing as much hesitation, as we used to, before pivot control. It's like, okay, you have to upgrade to the latest and greatest panel. And also, I've never used a panel like that before. And now with the original panel staying there, and we purposely made the pivot control. You're talking switches and stuff, and we've made the pivot control panel that goes alongside. It's the smaller FieldNET box that goes alongside their OEM panel. We made that ultra simple. I mean, it's got a little dial that points to forward, reverse, wet, and they just dial it in and push it. So if you're in the field, it becomes just incredibly simple. Now it's a FieldNET controller, so you're using this probably most of the time. But I've had a lot of kind of father-son feedback that they say, hey, we're getting the best of both worlds out here, because either dad or grandpa, they just like to go out and manually check and manually start or stop a pivot every now and then. But the younger generation, they'll do it all from his or her phones, right? And so the simplicity of the FieldNET user interface that's in the field is appealing to producers, because they can take over the years, as a farm operation grows, I mean, they could have a dozen different makes and models and brands of different things, and then they're even if they were switches and stuff like that, they're different. You open up a panel and they're all different. So with the FieldNET pivot control, you can have the same user interface on everything, but then again, 99% of the operation is done through the app. in FieldNET, which is where you get your consistency, and it's simple, and you can do it in the comfort of, an air-conditioned pickup or at home, or in the office or whatever. But if full control isn't necessarily what the producer wants or needs, we have some other options as well. For example, we have a pivot control light. So pivot control light is just a small pack, doesn't have any user interface, so a grower doesn't interface with it. Mounts on the end of the machine, electrically hooks in, and we control the pivot from the end. We can control the end guns. It has GPS built into it, so we know where it's at in the field. It can control direction and speed. So great application or use case for a pivot control light are those growers that have generators, and so if they're out firing up the generator anyway, they're starting their pivot, but once they start their pivot, then they've got FieldNET to monitor it from then on out. So if it runs out of fuel or gets stuck or whatever, they have the benefits of FieldNET at that point. And it's a real nice affordable way for the people that have generators. If I can't remote start, that's not a big deal, because I can't remote start anyway because of the generator. And then we also have call it a very ultra simple, and it's a monitor only product called the Pivot Watch. It doesn't electrically hook up to the pivot at all. It just straps on, kind of like a watch band. It's got a band on it. It just straps on, and it can be installed, on any pivot. It runs on solar, in a battery, and it's a great segue product too. So that if a producer's kind of unsure if they want, something like a FieldNET, it's a real easy, low cost, way of monitoring their pivots. And many times what happens is, hey, this monitoring's cool, but as that rainstorm went through, I still had to go 30 miles to go shut my pivot down. It'd been nice just to be able to get on the phone and stop it, right? So it's a great segue product between monitor only and getting into the full control, and even increasing your return on investment and saving you even more time.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to take a look at the pivot control light.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see how the advancement in technologies have advanced the agriculture as a whole, and particularly the irrigation. So, can you please give us what your take is on about the future of irrigation, how it might look like, and what are some of the challenges that you think in advancing the data-driven irrigation management?
Yeah, so the challenges, growers face, they got to feed the world, and the population growth, meaning that they need to increase their, crop quality and yield, and without, overusing, precious resources. So, even some of these challenges can be, political or social in nature, but innovation and technology can counter that. As an example, if you go to our website, we have this sustainability calculator where we've done some case studies, and we've learned savings and so on. And so there's a kind of I guess I'd call it a kind of a clock that's monitoring overall FieldNET sustainability effort. And we're estimating this year that FieldNET has around the world has probably saved about 4 billion gallons of water, and I think it was, but it was like 1.2 billion kilowatts of energy savings, and almost 1 million metric tons of CO2 savings. And so the FieldNET monitoring control products are a critical factor in achieving things like this. So tools such as water trend that you brought up, and FieldNET Advisor is a huge step in dramatically simplifying irrigation decisions for the growers in a very big data, heavily data driven world. And it can be overwhelming. And FieldNET Advisor does all that heavy computations behind the scenes, kind of transparently for the growers. It's like having thousands of virtual soil moisture probes in your field. And I think this innovation and technology trend will continue. The adoption of the technologies will continue to increase because they have to. And we need to make every drop of water and every drop of nutrient count, going into the future, and so that'll be important.
Yeah, that definitely is an important topic. Where can our listeners go to learn more about Lindsay and find out more information on Zimmatic and FieldNET?
Yeah, so if they go out to our website, it's www.lindsay.com, and it's spelled with an A, so it's LINDSAY .com, and you'll be able to go into irrigation, look at the brands. You can look at Zimmatic products, look at FieldNET products. Even if you were intrigued by the road zipper, you could go see a road zipper video, in the infrastructure part of it. So, or even directly, go to one of our Zimmatic dealers. There's a dealer locator, and if they don't know where the Zimmatic dealer is, and get a demo and find out more, from the dealerships as well.
Awesome. As we come towards the end of this episode, so is there anything that we didn't talk about and you would like to share before we wrap this up?
At Husker Harvest, I was demoing the Smart Pivot, so we're excited about this next major step in irrigation advancement. The Smart Pivot is groundbreaking innovation, basically built around what growers value the most, and that's saving their time and saving their labor. And the Smart Pivot takes the individual tower of a pivot, and it networks them together, so that we can monitor both machine and field health and performance. And we're out beta testing our Smart Pivots right now, and getting grower feedback, and seeing a lot of excitement from the producers on the on the benefits of what machine health and field health could offer them, and the savings that it could provide, and uptime, and keeping the systems in the most optimal performance.
So, Reese, we have a tradition on the FarmBits podcast, and we would like to ask our guests for some words of wisdoms or a piece of advice. For people starting or wanting to work in the irrigation field, do you have any tips or suggestions for skills that you think would be important for them to develop during a degree program or just starting in the industry?
Yeah, sure. Been in irrigation for a long time, and a lot of it's because of the people and what we're doing. But something that people actually may not understand, of all of the agricultural equipment that's available to farmers, the center pivot has the greatest single impact on producing a quality crop and maximizing yields. So, I've been around irrigation for 35 years, and I still get inspired, knowing that what I do at least has a little small part in helping feed the world. But as far as the skills go, maybe depending on the area of focus that you're in. Emily, I think I saw in your bio that you're in agronomy, understanding the irrigation scheduling technologies that are available, and how that goes into irrigation scheduling and integrates with pivots. I learned recently, I was watching a presentation, and the checkbook method, which I'm sure you've gone through extensively. It's close to like 50 years old, and it's still widely used today. And the modern technologies like a water train and FieldNET advisor, can really help reduce the complexity and the labor needed, and have that highly accurate irrigation scheduling. And I remember seeing where there's always it's kind of like a New Year's resolution, right? My intent is I'm gonna really keep tracking this irrigation stuff, but then the grower gets really busy, and it's like like trying to do your checkbook. Eventually you kind of let it slip because you're just so busy. But if you can have the those inputs automatically feed in, so as FieldNet's putting down a water application, it's automatically feeding into that checkbook, if you will. And so you don't have to do all that extra labor and work and deal with that complexity. So understanding those technologies, and I think it's a great field to be in. Perhaps somebody's going into more of the technology or the technician support side of things. Maybe they're going into maintenance and operation of mechanized irrigation. And so the future innovations like, Smart Pivot, essentially mean that, learn more or know more, have the computer skills, be able to, have as good a computer skills as you do with a voltmeter, right? To work with electricity, because but it'll be fun too. Technicians, I think, are looking forward to, having something like a smart pivot that indicates to them, here's what the issue is. And so before I even deploy to go work and help a farmer get their system up and running again, I'll know what to bring, I'll know what to look for, pretty much ahead of time. And then I guess another part of it, if you're getting into, product development or product management, like I'm, really proud to be a part of, is the broader, understanding, what the global market looks like and the outlook and, the challenges, balancing the needs to, grow more food and fiber and for a growing population. And growers, still need to maintain a profit to survive, but also ensuring this, the sustainability of that land and water for, generations to come. So there's a big opportunity, down the road, and continue opportunity and the challenge to, for new innovations that, help growers, continue to do what they do in a very sustainable yet profitable way.
Thank you very much to Reece for taking the time to join us for this episode of the FarmBits podcast. It's really exciting to hear about all the different products that Lindsay and Zimmatic have to offer. One of my favorite parts of this episode was that FieldNET can be used with any existing pivot panel.
My favorite part for the episode was that how advancement in technology has led to irrigation management by just using a mobile application like FieldNET. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and we look forward to sharing another digital egg story with you next week.
Thank you for taking the time to join us today on the FarmBits podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts to be informed about the latest content each week.
We welcome your feedback, so if you have comments or questions for us, please reach out to us over email, on Twitter, or in the review section of your favorite podcast platform. Our contact information can be found in the show notes.
We would like to thank Nebraska Extension for their support of this podcast and their commitment to providing high-quality informational material to members of the agriculture community in Nebraska and beyond.
The opinions expressed by the host and guest on this podcast are solely their own and do not reflect the views of Nebraska Extension or the University of Nebraska-Lincoln.
We look forward to you joining us next week for another episode of FarmBits.